Hi, everyone. My name is Julie Ireland, and I'm a GTD coach. And I wanted to talk today in this video about something that shows up very, very often in coaching sessions, which is, project support and what it is and what it encompasses and kind of what to do with and about it. So when I'm working with clients, one of the first things we do is we start to build out a project list and we define a project. Everyone's familiar at this point with, what's a project? Anything that I have some semblance of commitment to completing. It's more than a couple of action steps and there's some semblance of timing to it. So something that I'm going to complete over the next couple of weeks to the next couple of months. And, one of the first things we do is we define what the desired outcome is. So naming the project with a clear finish line. It makes so much more sense for my brain if I say, I need to plan and organize my Labor Day camping trip versus camping. So what's the desired outcome? What does done look like? What is that thing that we intend to finish? And then the next question is, what am I going to do next to move toward that outcome? So it's that, very much the essence of the getting things done methodology. What's the desired outcome and what's the next action? Then there's sort of like, well, what do I do with everything else? And so, sometimes that can be a little bit nebulous. So I wanted to talk about that today, just in case anyone has a question about it. So we look at project support or project plans. It's really just the information that's related to a project. It might be, things we're thinking about. There might be like physical materials or digital materials or, even the natural planning model, the plan itself for the project. So, not all projects are created equal. Not all project plans or project support is created equal. And, one of the things that I find for a lot of people is that they feel like they have to store everything in one place. And, one of the things I want to talk about today is really kind of debunking that myth. So it's pretty rare in my experience, unless a project is really, really small, like you're going to plan your, 6-year-old birthday party, it's probably, if it's a really small project, there might not be a need, for project support, but anything that has kind of substance to it or, at any level of complexity or timing to it, there's going to be information and materials that we need to keep. So I've kind of looked at this and I've found, and, there may be others. So, I'm sort of always open to, exploring this further. But what I've found is, for the most part, I find there's really 3 buckets of project support. So the first one is a place to store kind of our thinking and our thoughts and our ideas about the project. So, we've created this outcome. We're going to probably have some thoughts about it. We're going to be thinking about, maybe what we want to accomplish or ideas or things that need to be done. We need a place to store that information. Otherwise, it's going to take up space in our heads, our RAM, which is not great, or we're going to run the risk of jamming up our action list with stuff we can't do yet. So like where to store this kind of top of mind stuff. Any really good solid list manager is going to handle this beautifully because there's going to be a note section attached to the project, which is just a great place. It's a safe place to put that information. We're kind of like throughout the day, we think of something. It's like we have a really, easily accessible place for that. And then we can review it as often as we need to, certainly as part of the weekly review. That kind of auxiliary note, so to speak, is attached to the project. I was working with a client recently who is using Evernote as their list manager, and I didn't realize that Evernote has a wonderful template built into it that's the natural planning model template. So there's a template, that's attached to the project if and when needed. We can, define the purpose and the principles and the vision, and then a space for the brainstorming. So that's sort of, I thought that's really, really beautifully designed. I mean, that's not always necessary, but it's nice to have when we need it. So place to store kind of our thinking related to the project. Second is digital information. So, once again, depending on the complexity or the depth and breadth of the project, we're probably going to have digital information that's attached to it. So where to store that? First question I have is, does anyone else need access to it? Because sometimes there's, the project has a collaborative nature to it, such that there's a shared repository. If that's not needed, then, where do I want to store this information? Kind of doing some thinking about it on the front end so that I have kind of clear access to it when I need it. So many times, I'm working with a client and, they'll open an email and there's attachment, and the attachment's just not actionable, but it's related to a project. So oftentimes I see the impulse in the moment to store it on the desktop. And then later on, the computer desktop has like 150 documents that are completely unrelated to each other, and we can't find what we're looking for. So kind of really thinking on the front end, where to keep that digital information, which might need to live in multiple places. We all have emails going back and forth, for the projects. We might have documents or spreadsheets or a CRM or something like that. So it's just like really being clear and giving ourselves permission to keep it in multiple places if that's what's needed. And then the third place is physical stuff. So not all projects have physical information related to it, but if we need to store it, if there's physical stuff that needs to live in a physical file folder, I have a drawer, attached to my desk, which is my project support folders. Most of my projects have a physical file. Not everyone needs that, but I like to have it, and it's at my fingertips so I can access it when I need it. Anyone who's ever done any kind of home renovation or anything like that, and you've got like physical tiles and information and all that stuff, like we need a place to put it that makes sense to us so that we can retrieve it whenever we need it. Really, the hallmark of any good, reference system is being able to find something on the back end when we need it. So, just giving ourselves permission to really kind of audit like what's needed in terms of auxiliary information related to my project. And that might be situational for each one. And this, giving ourselves permission to keep it as needed, not overdoing it and not underdoing it, and understanding that might be case by case. So as always, I hope this helps. Please feel free to leave a comment, and thanks for watching.
For more GTD resources, please visit gettingthingsdone.com and David Allen's YouTube channel. For more information, please email us at info@gtdfocus.com or visit our website gtdfocus.com/contact.